The European Union Election Observation Mission to Lesotho presented its final report on Monday, including a range of recommendations on the National Assembly elections of the 7th of October 2022. This final report comes 2 months later after the general elections. The mission's mandate was to assess the 2022 National Assembly elections in line with Lesotho's legislation, as well as with the international and regional standards and commitments Lesotho has made regarding democratic elections. According to its long-term methodology, the mission assessed all stages of the electoral process, including voter registration, campaign activities, the role of civil society, the announcement of the results and the voting, counting and tabulation. The chief observer, Ignacio Corral, member of the European Parliament, highlighted that the IEC received its funding late in the process in weekly installments, which also impacted negatively on the election preparations. He recommended that the IEC should be provided with budgetary independence through direct and timely access to funds approved in the national budget.
For this election, one of the biggest challenges was the lack of sufficient funds for the preparation and conduct of elections. Funding came late in the process and was released on weekly basis. Last week we met the Independent Electoral Commission and were told all workers have been paid, but party agents and some suppliers are still waiting for their money. We recommend that the budget is directly given to the IEC in a timely manner. The IEC needs to be able to plan and execute all its activities independently with agreed requirements of transparency and accountability.
He also mentioned that the voters' turnout for 2022 elections was lower than 38% since Lesotho's independence, and he recommended that the IEC should strengthen the implementation of continuous civic education, including in educational institutions, and timely voter education campaigns, both offline and online, focusing on youth, women and the people with disability.
Voter turnout for this election was lower than 38%, the lowest since the country's independence. To tackle the problem, which is a big problem for democracy, we believe that strengthening continuous civic education is the key. We underline that for this election, the Independent Electoral Commission didn't have the resources to do timely voter education campaigns. But it is not only about campaigns just before the election, it is also about how much the Lesotho people know about the fundamental rights. This includes the freedom of speech, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to stand as a candidate. We see that schools and education are key. A lot can be done also online when the idea is right and the resources are there. Voter education programs need to focus on youth, women, and people with disabilities. The higher is the turnout, the higher is the participation and awareness of civil rights, the healthier is the state of democracy in the country.
He also recommended that all use of state resources in campaigning to be prohibited, as it's not of good practice.
We recommend that all use of state resources in campaigning to be prohibited. A good example is the use of government vehicles for campaign purposes. Our observers witnessed that, and they did it all over the country actually. So, according to present laws, this is not illegal, but however, we consider it not a good practice. That's why we recommend to prohibit the use of state resources in campaigning.
Corral further explained that late allocation of funds to the IEC by the government compromised the timely implementation of voter education outreach activities, which had to be reduced from 3 months to 3 weeks prior elections to election day.
Another concern is about the election preparation that were conducted on time but were difficult to implement due to legal uncertainty and limited funding. This especially affected voter registration and voter education. Voter education activities had to be reduced from 3 months to only 3 weeks. The constituency and polling station of some voters changed late in the process, something that can be easily avoided in the future with some improvements in the organization.
The European Union Electoral Observation Mission final report contains a total of 21 recommendations. The report also suggests strengthening the independence of the Lesotho Communication Authority, the LCA, as well as the implementation of continuous civic education. The majority of the recommendations offered by the European Union Electoral Observation Mission require legal changes to be implemented.